Hello, everyone. Today we are going to have one of the most special sports talk clubs, and it's dedicated to digitalization. And we are now going to start amid a massive outage of Google services. We have been forced to route to Facebook and stream through Facebook, but I hope that after we will publish the video, the recording, you will be able to access it in all other platforms. Anyway, we're live. We're going to talk about digitization of sports. Sports Talk Club is a platform that happens in the framework of PM Education, and it's my pleasure to present our guests who are going to talk about viewer and fan engagement and about how to bring sponsors on board in these unusual realia. I will briefly present our guests and then I will give them a little bit more floor time. First of all, Vadim Misura, the representative of Parimatch, the trademark. Alexander Mamulega, VP Marketing Shakhtar, FC Shakhtar. Tamara Padishvili, VP Marketing of Parimatch in Ukraine. We will also have a remote presence of the representatives of the Spanish La Liga, who will join us shortly in 10 minutes, who will also be able to see on the screen then. And before we start our very unusual live feed, I would like to pass the floor to Vadim Misura, the representative of Trademark Parimatch. Good afternoon, dear friends. We as Parimatch, the brand, are extremely happy to see you at this event that is happening in the framework of PM Education on the platform of Sports Talk Club. This will be our 6th meeting, and throughout this entire period we have been discussing various topics including esports and digital marketing in sports and locating, attracting and engaging clients and fans, etc. And we're very happy that this community feed that we are doing jointly with our partners is attracting your attention, and thousands of viewers tune into our programs. And that's why we are convinced that this is going to support the development of sports in general and sports marketing in specific. And as representatives of socially responsible business, it's very important for us for our product to meet the high and stringent European standards. This year has been very difficult for all of us, but nevertheless, it has become an opportunity for us to learn new and interesting platforms, which we are going to talk about. We will see that football, hockey, and basketball in offline have been left without our offline audiences. But we also know that there is a revival coming for these sports. But meanwhile, we're trying to fill in this gap with these meetings and these talks. And we need to understand that marketing shouldn't be static and keep engaging the audiences and fans online and make sure that they stay with their favorite sports. That's why Parimatch, the brand, is very happy to see these great experts that we have assembled here and proceed to the topic of our discussion, which is digital marketing in sports. And we are convinced that this is going to be a very productive discussion. And the brief pauses that we are going to have talking about digital technologies, I think all the downtime on YouTube is going to be but temporary, and we hope that thousands of our viewers will be back in no time. Over to you, Maxim, and I wish you a great and productive discussion. Thank you very much. Yes, we are now streaming on Facebook, and that's why we'd be happy to see your comments and questions to the speakers in the comments under the video that you are watching right now. We are going to read the highest voted comments, and we're going to ask them to our speakers. And the author of the most interesting question will get rewards from the brand of Podimatch. So share the link, tell your friend, and tell them that it's a very unusual stream in a very digital era with the most interesting digital content you can ever tune into. And at that, we would like to tune into our discussions. I'd like to draw your attention to the slide which presents a survey by PwC in 150 countries of the sports industry. And the next slide are the top 3 opportunities and threats for the sports industry. Number 1 being the improvement of user experience in digital media, in the digital environment. And I'm very, very happy to pass the floor to the representatives of the Spanish La Liga, which I believe is one of the strongest leagues, without any exaggeration, in the world, who are working hard and daily on improving their fan engagement, not only in football, but in all sports in general. I would like to present Jose Carlos Layosa, the representatives of La Liga in Europe, and Anastasia Zalovska, the uh, representative of La Liga in Ukraine. So I hope that Jose can hear us. If so, I would like to pass the floor and the microphone to you.
Maxim, yeah, you listen to me.
Окей, вам слово.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for the invitation. We would like to thank you very much for the invitation to this amazing event. I'm really glad to share the presentation with my colleague Anastasia. I will start with it. Okay. Well, it's not football, it's La Liga. Thank you very much for the invitation and for your time to be here. We would like to speak about what's La Liga, our international strategy, our digital strategy, and how we manage to engage the fan, and also our sponsors. But what's La Liga? La Liga is a private sport organization that involves the 20 clubs in La Liga Santander and the 22 in La Liga Smart Bank. La Liga is a global, innovative, and social responsible organization. We always speak, it's not football, it's La Liga, because we are entertainment, esports, technology, business, social responsibility, and we involve more than football. We involve many, many atmospheres of this in this sport. Our international strategy. We are a Spanish national tournament, but we have a global product. La Liga has grown a lot exponentially in the last years. This is thanks to three pillars. The first is the joint venture that we have outside of Spain. Our international offices that we have 11 offices, and you have the blue points in the map, and our global network, international global network. We have 46 colleagues in all the world working to be close to the fan and to the markets. Located in the market specifically, we can develop all we want, adapted to the market. And why we do that? Because right now we have the possibility to show La Liga in 180 countries through 107 broadcasters, and we have a cumulative audience of 2 billion people in the last season. So we cover all the continents, all the countries. We have a global product adapted to every market that we will tell you more about this in the following slides. So our mission is to have a local strategy. We have a global product, but with a local strategy adapted to every market, to every fan, and to the language that every fan has. Um, in this topic, it's really important the digital strategy, and now my colleague Anastasia is going to follow with this topic. So I will give the floor to her.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me and my colleague Osai here. My name is Anastasia and I work as the content manager in La Liga. And right now I'm going to explain you our digital strategy and how we generate fan engagement through our digital strategy. So to begin with, as you can see here, this is our online presence. We have accounts in Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, VK, OK, YouTube, TikTok. Then we have four different accounts in China, such as Weibo, WeChat, Twitter, Douyin. Then we have an account in Line and we have an account in Twitch. In total, we have 125.5 million followers across all of our different social media networks. So following this is our ecosystem. As you can see, in 2017, we began with accounts in Facebook, in Twitter, in Instagram, in YouTube, in WeChat, in Weibo. Then we decided that we have to expand our social media presence. So we opened an account in VK in 2018. In 2018, we opened an account in Oka and as well online in Twitter. In 2009, in 2019 we opened an account in TikTok, which is a very popular social media network and which became very popular in the sense of COVID. And recently we have opened an account in Twitch. Following, I would like to talk about our objective. So our main objective is globalization and increase of our audience and followers throughout the world. We create new audience through our social media networks by adapting our content to many different markets and producing our content in different languages. Further, later we'll explain more about that. So one of our objectives is to increase our brand value so that more people know about our brand and that more people recognize our brand. And our last objective is to support the club's organization. Was previously I mentioned that we have 20 clubs in La Liga Santander and 22 clubs in La Liga Smart Tag. So we have to help these clubs to build an online presence. And one of these examples will be that recently we helped Cadiz to open an account in VK. So we offer two types of content, which is nutritious and delicious content. So nutritious type of content is very so nutritious content is a very simple content. It's basically statistics about the game, such as classifications or top scores. So it's everything statistically related to the game. And then we offer delicious content, which is a content which is more interesting and which our editors adapt to attract the attention of our audience and provide them more entertainment. Here you can see two examples and the difference. This is the example which we love to give. So bread represents the nutritious content. Nutritious content basically provides you with information, but it doesn't really leave you craving for more. While delicate content leaves you craving for more, such as ice cream. So our idea is not to only give useful information to our audience, but to make them attracted to our platform and to make them engage with us more. Uh, so this is our idea. It's more than 90 minutes. It's more than a game, and it's more than a day. So as you can see here, the peak of our engagement and impressions happens during the game. However, have to keep the attention of the audience throughout the week. So therefore, throughout the week, we generate many different content related to the game. So this can be, for example, short videos of the best goals or the best skills which happens. For example, every Thursday we have two videos with special effects which our editors adapt. And we don't only post content which is related to the games, we also post content from some historical moments which happens in La Liga on this day, and as well happy birthday wishes to our current La Liga players. So this is our rate of investment model. As previously mentioned, we're not only the football company, we are the entertainment company. So for us, it's not only important to put out information related to football, we have to provide something more for our audience to keep their engagement. The more audience we have, the more engagement we have. And the more engagement we have, the more money we can make. We usually make money through monetizing our content on Facebook and on Twitter. On Twitter, we have a special amplified program where our advertisers can put a short 6 second pre-roll before one of our videos. So our content is adapted to many different it's adapted to many different platforms. And this is very important for us because, as previously mentioned, we have accounts in Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. And for every one of these social media networks, we have to have a special format. So, for example, for Instagram, we use 4:5 format. In Facebook, we use 1:1. In Twitter, we use 16:9. And this is very important because it allows the users to comfortably view our content. And also, for us, it's important to have communication with our audience. So it's not only about what we put out; it's also important for us to receive feedback from our audience and really study the trends and ensure that our content is relevant, useful, and entertaining for our audience. So previously mentioned, our strategy is global, so we have a global message, but we adapt it to local market. And we do this by having many different social media accounts in many different languages. So in Twitter, we have accounts in Portuguese, in French, in Arabic as well. We have two accounts in UK, which are all in Russian. Then we have different accounts in Thailand. And on Facebook, we have one global account, but we can post segmented content through Facebook segmentation. We study where our followers come from thanks to Blink 5 Trends. And thanks to Blink Fire, specifically, we can really see where our followers come from and generate content for them in their local languages. We have many different community managers working in La Liga who adapt and work on this content. And we also work with help from different agencies. At the moment, we have agencies in China, agencies in Russia, and we have agencies in Thailand and Indonesia, which help us to work on this content. So this is our digital activation phase. So the first step of this would be awareness. So we have to be aware of what message we want to put out and who our target audience are. For this, as I previously mentioned, we use Brainfile to carefully study the sociographic, the demographic, and which social media works in which country. For example, as we know in Russia, we don't really use Facebook or Twitter, we use Facebook. And this is very important for us because when we do something on social media, we have to ensure that it reaches our target audience. Then we interact with our audience. So we interact with our audience through doing many different digital activations, such as, for example, giveaways or the quizzes, and that's where we build an opportunity to favor the participation of our audience. I think this is very important in building credibility and establishing a long-lasting relationship with our audience. Our activations were not only digital, They can also be offline activations, which we do together with the Liga Global Network, where we work with them to not only organize online events, but also organize events in many different countries. Uh, so this is about our content. Accessible is not enough. So you can have one message, just translate that message into different languages and put it out on social media. No, you have to adapt this message differently for every local market and ensure that you're respecting the audience, you're respecting the culture of that country, and that this type of content will be relevant and will not be conflicting. So this what I would say is our key is like working together with many different representatives, many different agencies, and many different community managers to have one big common message, but very well adapted to the local markets. Uh, Now, I would like to talk more about the international engagement and the different activations we've done. So I'm going to pass word back to my colleague Jose, which will explain to you a little bit more about different digital activations online and offline, which we've done for El Clásico.
Okay, hi again. As we were speaking, here we have an example of what we do in combination between online, offline, and physical activation. This is our 90th season in La Liga. We have the best match in the world, that is El Clásico. We have 50 million people watching the game, more than 1,000 social posts from La Liga, 600 million impressions, 63 million video views. We did a combination of online, offline, and physical activation. In the images, you can see that we deployed a red carpet, uh, saying the people here, we are in the premiere of El Clásico, and we did this in 7 countries. One of them was Tajikistan, where Parimatch took part of this activation, as you can see in the image on the right, and also in a watch party of El Clásico. So we did 100 activations in 22 countries with 13 partners. We engage our fans, being with them, close to them in the market. Thank you to our global network, and also we work with our sponsors and partners really close in the market to promote La Liga and to give value to our product, and it's really important. There are some examples of what we were doing, what La Liga did in this El Clásico, always following the protocols of the country that we are working in, and of course, in a safe environment due to the situation that we have now. We did in Belgium, or La Liga did in Belgium, El Clásico in cinemas. This is a really nice activation that people enjoy a lot. They can buy the ticket, watch El Clásico in a huge screen, and spend El Clásico with supporters, with people from La Liga, ambassadors, and having an amazing time. The second example, La Liga did a tournament in Vietnam, and after the tournament, a public viewing of El Clásico with more than 1,000 persons involved in this project. And the third example was a drive-in cinema in Latin America. This is a specific in Argentina. Um, it's an amazing example of how La Liga adapt itself to every market, and something that is really common in Latin America, that it's a drive-in to use the opportunity to have this activation in this kind of environment and use it in a COVID time. It's really difficult to activate in something like physical environment, and La Liga did it. And also the most important is the activations in an online way. But I will again to give the floor to my colleague Anastasia. She will tell you more about these initiatives.
Okay, I would like to continue by explaining through different digital activations we've done. So I'm going to begin with organic content. Uh, so we have done several organic posts where we have adapted our content to different markets. So for the purpose of this example, I'm going to show you this example of Brazil. So for example, for Brazil, we have done a match preview with Brazilian players of La Liga who play in El Clásico. And we posted this in La Liga Bra, which is our La Liga account in Portuguese. As you can see, this type of content works very good because the followers of that account see how we adapted this match preview, especially for them. Another example would be the account classic in Russian, and this is also a type of very interesting content because here you can see a picture of two former Atletico legends. And here in Russian, you can see that one says that 24 hours and not for El Clásico. So we didn't translate the same message. One says that for El Clásico. We have done the El Clásico preview differently in every single of our region. In the third example, you can see match from for India with the quote in Hindi. And the first example, which I'm going to show you, is the post which was done for China, which is the animated description of players in Mandarin language, all the players who will play in the class. So by looking at this example, we can see that we have a common message, and our common message is that El Clásico is approaching, and that you basically have to watch it. But this message was adapted very differently to every single one. Um, so this was our organic content, and then we had some paid content. So we had a 360 plan, which was developed across all our digital platforms, which was developed together with the marketing department. And the idea of this was to generate at least one digital asset for a Classico for every one of their sponsors to increase their exposure. Uh, as I mentioned, that one of our important factors is to have interaction with our audience. That's why on Twitter, together with Budweiser, we provided El Clásico quiz, which our audience can take. This was very good because this increased the engagement and also gave more exposure to the sponsor. The second example, which I'm going to use, is the example with the for BK, which is an interaction which we've done with Harry Much. It's an interactive activation with the purpose to generate more engagement. Uh, as this worked very good in VK, and this was entirely done in Russian. The purpose of this activation was to generate engagement, to increase engagement, and also to provide free classic entertainment to our audience. For Instagram stories, we have done a filter together with our sponsor, which is LiveSport. Together, we developed a filter, as you can see here, an example. And also, we have adapted one of our quizzes together with Santander for Instagram stories. And this is where I mentioned how our content is different. So, for example, different format in Twitter and then different format for Instagram stories. And to finish off on Facebook, we have done match previews that traffic together with our sponsor Dream11. All this was done to, as I previously mentioned, to increase the exposure of our sponsor and to create and generate more engagement and provide more entertainment to our audience to encourage them to watch El Clásico and to interact with us on social media. Thank you very much, me and Jose Carlos. Thank you for the opportunity. I hope this was very interesting for you. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask us about them.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much. This has been very interesting. to know how the digital process is organized over at La Liga. We are lucky today. We have a club here presented who is notably arguably one of the best social media assets in Ukraine in terms of sports clubs. And Alexander Mamaliga, the director of marketing for Shakhtar FC, will tell us more about what tools did the club use in order to raise user turnout, fan turnout on the stadiums, but also to drive engagement on social networks regardless of quarantine and lockdown restrictions. Hi, I'm Alexander Mamaliga, and I am responsible for marketing over at Shakhtar, and I'm going to tell you more about how we engage with fans and what size systems we use, what kind of segmentations we run, and what dynamics we have in terms of our work. In the presentation, we will tell you more about what the marketing department does, what turnout we had starting from 2017 up to 2020. And we're going to tell you more about who we believe our fans are in terms of marketing, not in terms of the layman. And how we also work in terms of loyalty with our fans. So what does the marketing service do exactly? We build fan loyalty with the club. But loyalty is an all-encompassing concept that tells you everything and nothing. In terms of business, you need to be a bit more specific and more measurable, most importantly. And in terms of marketing, our responsibility is the revenue that we're getting through all of our channels and turnout and engagement of the fans with our products. Besides, the marketing department at Shakhtar is like a local or internal agency. We help our sibling departments such as sponsorships and commerce and VIP departments to implement whatever it is they need to implement. We are also, starting from last year, we're also engaged in media production. I took 3 previous seasons for this presentation, which were based on our achievements in Kharkiv, when the team was playing at the Metalist Stadium in Kharkiv. If you compare 17, 18, and 19, 20, the figures are very similar, and the 19 to 20 is a prediction of how our turnout would have grown if not for the COVID-19 restrictions. But coming back to 17, 18, and 18, 19 is what the media sees. But I think the situation actually changed a lot in these 2 years, and I will tell you more about what the dynamic actually was. This graph shows the turnout dynamics in the seasons. And you see that the more opaque color, it's outlined in the more opaque color. And the biggest issue for us was that the turnout dynamics of our home games was falling and dropping. And this is where I joined the club as head of marketing in the end of the 17th season. And we had some analysis, we held a survey, and we figured that we need to make some changes in terms of how we're going to engage with the fans. And at the beginning of the 18 to 19 season, we started to be more proactive and more aggressive in using our CRM system. We started to expand our channels of communication and how we work with our fans. Of course, there is a set of constraints that we work in. First of all, it's a stagnating market. Some clubs are not present anymore, and the Championship of Ukraine, they have been replaced by some other clubs. And in fact, the purchasing power is not growing, and the market is not growing since 2014. We also always play away because we do not have a home stadium per se. The team trains in Kiev and plays in Kharkiv. So for us, the engagement of the team with its audience is quite a challenge. We did some events in Kharkiv with the team, but there were actually like 2 to 3 teams, and the factors that influence the formation of loyalty, they were kind of constrained and limited. In terms of purchasing power, we haven't changed our price points. Our ticket prices stayed virtually the same throughout these 3 seasons. And again, we are in the entertainment business. We understand that we're not even competing with other clubs for the fan base, because engaging a fan of a different team and making them loyal, if they're rooting for a different club, that's very difficult. But we are actually competing. What we're competing with is digital TV, cinemas, and PlayStation, where you can play football or where you can watch matches just from the comfort of your home. And all of this industry is growing exponentially in terms of the stadium and how the experience that people get in stadiums. Maybe in 15 years, there haven't been any disruptive innovations that happened on stadiums when you watch the game live. And one of the factors that negatively affect the context in the market is the fact that the majority of the sales are done per match. So if a person decided to come to on Saturday, but it rains and the match is canceled, or it's just a very bad weather, they just don't want to bring their family. So a lot of the decisions are made on match day, and that means that if the weather is bad, people will just watch the game on TV or in a pub or go to a shopping mall or watch something else. It's also important to understand that we have budget limitations. The marketing department does not work with a limitless budget. We work in a set of very strict constraints, and our marketing spend that we can actually afford and our targets are around about 10% of our revenue. And in our 17, 18, 18, 19, and our latest season in Kharkiv, our real figures were about 7 to 8%. And that allows us to promote separate events such as match days, but we can't do some extensive campaigns which would be targeted at building deeper loyalty with our fan base through some over-the-top events. And the last limitation is the methodology that we use to assess our fan turnout. Probably most of the clubs of the Ukrainian league have similar issues. The attendance is assessed at the level of sold or printed tickets. And that is not a very valid assessment, because you can sell the tickets, you can print the tickets and issue them, but it doesn't mean that the person will actually visit the game. We also tried to reassess how we do that. We thought about how we could transition into a more positive dynamic in terms of turnout. And if we assess our results, using our CRM system, we've been able to make some considerable steps forward. First of all, our CRM system allows us to distribute our costs more efficiently. And later, I'll be able to tell you how we do that. We've been able to cut our costs by 25 to 30% while raising our revenue at the same time. You remember that the 2 previous seasons on the top line level was more or less the same, but we were nevertheless able to grow our revenue by 25 to 30%. And what's most important is that we've been able to grow the number of people who have visited all of the matches of the season. Because if we had several dozen of these people in the latest in the latest season in March, when we had the most difficult games, which were the winter games, the coldest games, and it's not very comfortable to watch. But the projection was built based on the figures of the moment when how we worked until March in Kharkiv. We were able to grow the number of these people who visited all of our matches, every single one of them. Of course, we worked with our CRM database. We tried to engage our fans, and we tried to use social networks and other channels in order to identify people and to be more proactive and be more efficient in cooperating with our fans, each one of our fans. And now let's define our fan in terms of marketing, not in terms of layman. But for the majority of fans, the people who support any football club in Ukraine, anyone who is basically a consumer of sports content, this could be a person who sits at home, watches television, and roots for their favorite athlete. But in order to do a quality step forward, we needed to understand who our client really is. The first and the most important factors is the fact that this fan needs to interact with the club's products or visit the club's games. This is one of the characteristics. And secondly, the person will rarely buy one ticket and come alone. That's why they bring an audience with them. And that's the second characteristic. And this is something that we can track through our CRM system, and this is something that we really work with. What's also very important for us is the fact that people come to the stadium in to visit 5, 6, 7, 8 matches in a row. These people actually identify themselves with the club. They don't say Shakhtar has won or Shakhtar has made it into the 1/16 of the League of Europe. They say we have made it into the League of Europe. We have won. So the identity of this person fuses with the club. And this is something that we ideally strive for in terms of forming fan loyalty. And of course, the client needs to be identified in our systems. And this is the definition based on which we started to make our steps forward and thinking on how we can improve our situation and engage people to be more loyal and to come more to our actual games. When we understood who our fan is, we use different types of segmentation of our target audiences in terms of what's the best way to attract them to the stadium. Of course, we use some basic things such as demographics, which is gender, age, location, but we also introduced and implemented our own psychographic segmentation, which aims to assess the products that the person is consuming. And then we try to use behavioral dynamics. So let's say they come to the stadium, they open our message, or they don't open our message. We build dynamic segments and calculate a certain loyalty score for each of our fans daily. And that allows us to be more effective, and that allows us to have a segment of fans whose loyalty we can digitize and quantify and understand whether we're moving forward or there's something that we actually need to change because it's been dropping. Of course, loyalty is not static. If we take an example of how a person comes to us in the beginning of the season, they buy a season pass. That does not mean that they will be loyal for the entire season, because loyalty is a factor that is never static and that is never constant. From our side, inside of our systems, we are assessing the client's loyalty, and once they've bought a season pass for the entire season and we see that they visited the first match and the second match, but then something went wrong and they skipped the third and fourth games, and then their loyalty starts dropping inside of our systems, and when it reaches a certain lower threshold, they are dynamically reclassified into, without our participation, into a different segment with a lower loyalty, and this transition becomes a trigger for us in order to try to communicate with a fan. Maybe in an automated way, maybe through a manager, or maybe through our call center agents. And if the majority of clubs do this, when a person buys a season pass, we stopped caring about them, and only when we need to renew the season pass, they would reach out to the client. So it's a new season, and it's time to move on and maybe re-engage and reactivate this person. But the person can come to 2 matches and they dislike something, and then at this stage is when we need to start working with them. So when we see that a person bought a product but their loyalty is falling, we, without any further action from the fan, we will try to contact with them and try to understand what happened. And usually these issues are very trivial, but reaching out to them allows us to retain these clients and to grow the number of match visits for each match in the season. And for us, is one of the key factors that we use in terms of segmentation of our audiences. In addition to using our communications channels, allows us to transition from this one-to-many format where you just make one piece of content and you broadcast it through all the channels and everybody virtually gets an identical message. We try to get to transition to a one-to-one format, which means that if your fans are properly segmented and you understand their values and you understand how they come to the games, who they come with the games to, you try to build personalized communications, which is built on a personal understanding of the fan, which is very, very effective working with the fans and trying to engage them to come to the stadium. And that doesn't only work for football clubs, but that works for virtually any brand who cares about their reputation. What's also important to mention is that one-to-many or one-to-one communication models are all good and all, but it's important that no matter what kind of marketing mix you use, for this marketing mix to be based on the value for your end user. If there's no value, your job as marketing manager is to form this value, and you can't just come up with this value out of thin air. This value needs to be really tangible for your fan, for them to try it out, and it's going to be much easier to engage and re-engage your fan into some new activities. But this has to be based on some real and tangible value for your fans. We are now in some transition period due to obvious circumstances, but we are trying to improve and fine-tune our customer engagement models. We add new and new touch points, and we try to understand our fans better and better. And the first iteration when we introduced this approach was when we were able to grow our revenue significantly, and we were able to grow the number of transactions in the database. That's comparing the 17-18 and the 18-19 seasons. And in conclusion, in my presentation, I'd like to mention that if you use digital communications and digital channel, including CRM solutions, it is important to understand the goals of why you're using these tools. For us, it's building loyalty to the club of Shakhtar FC. This goal is measurable in terms of revenue, in terms of turnout, visits, and in terms of engagement with our digital products. And then we're going to break down these figures by 500 KPIs that we use in the marketing service in order to understand whether we're moving in the right direction or not. And we make this in the season by season planning cycle. any CRM system or any digital channels that you use for that matter uh, needs to provide support, but it should not substitute your added value of the product. Because if you have communications and you don't have added value, this is not going to be sustainable in the long-term perspective. And it's also very important to understand that when you work with the CRM system, is the expertise of the people implementing and operating the system matters a lot. It's important to not turn this into a technical case study where marketing specialists and IT specialists try to demonstrate how they can reach a person, because technically it can be very complicated, but if there's no result or it's difficult to decipher, then it's a point to think about. Maybe to take a step back and think whether there are simpler ways to do the same thing. It's not a technical exercise which you try to use to just display your technical prowess and power, because that's pointless in terms of marketing. And of course, depending on the situation, you will need time to test out different methodologies. We have a lot of assumptions and methodologies that we get from our fans. Some assumptions that we generate inside of our marketing team, and we test them pragmatically and systematically, and we see what works and what doesn't. And based on the results of these surveys, we move forward. And that was our last slide. Thank you very much. I have several questions. The question that several people have asked of how expensive is it to implement a CRM system, and what's the ROI? When you can get your return on your investment? Can you tell us about the financial part? What would have happened if you didn't have a CRM system, and what would your revenue look like? It is a good question, but a CRM, we use Microsoft Dynamics CRM, which is actually quite an old system, but in terms of effectiveness of communication, we've been able to cut our losses by 30% and grow our revenues accordingly, maybe by 25 to 30%. And in terms of communicating with our fans and gauging loyalty, a CRM system is probably our core instrument, our core tool, because all of our other tools and all of our social networks, all of our content production and communication with our fans, it all gets accumulated in the CRM system. And if we talk about whether or not anyone should use the CRM system and implement a CRM system, I would start in reverse. It's important to assess what number of loyal fans there are in any specific club, and if the number of fans is just a couple of hundred, you can use Google Sheets and Excel spreadsheets. It's going to be clunky at best. It's going to take some time, but you will have to still spend time on some technical issues. But if the number of your fans ranges in the thousands, it's probably worth considering even a free CRM system, which of course requires some technical know-how, or some more expensive CRM systems. It all depends on your budget. But let's say 500,000 population of a town, it's a basketball club. Let's say there are about 10,000 local audience who cheer and root for this team. Let's say we have 10,000 people who are loyal to the club and 2-3 times per year are ready to visit a game. So what does Shakhtar FC recommend that this club do? If you have 10,000 fans, I would look at some free CRMs. And again, we need to understand the LTV assessment, which is lifetime value of the fans. All of that is calculable very simply. So if you have 10,000 fans of a basketball club, what theoretical revenue can they generate to the club. If the figures are, well, I wouldn't say large, but at least allow you to consider more commercial solutions, you can look at implementing a commercial CRM, but you need to understand that even if you use a CRM system which is open source, which implementing it and supporting it will still incur costs for the club. Free things are not always the cheapest, ironically, but it's also very important to calculate. If you have, let's say, 10,000 fans, and you understand that during the first years, the CRM system is going to be ROI negative, you're going to think about how many fans you would like to have in a year or 2 years, so that you can basically get ROI. And this way you can get the cost of the CRM system and also calculate its ROI. Thank you very much. As a fan of CRM systems, I could say how much that costs. This could be starting from $45,000 to $50,000 per a commercial system of a high enough level in order to service a sporting organization. And for ROI, you can calculate that on your own, based on the figures that Alexander has mentioned in the presentation, on how you can maybe grow the value of your average check. If we have some other questions, we're going to read them in the end. Now we're going to pass the microphone to Tamara Badashvili, Director of Marketing for the brand of Parimatch Ukraine. Today, I'm going to talk about storytelling, and I'm going to present that in English.
One of my favorite topics, especially this year, because there were lots of different things happening around because of the pandemic, and lots of channels have changed their technical parameters, and also lots of brands had adapted differently, so that the channel mix has also changed, and the parameters that our audience is taking care of or are concentrated on are also changed. The topic today is the storytelling in football. So basically, what is storytelling? I would say that it's an art. It's an art of telling your audience what your business stands for, and finding the emotional link between the brand, between the football club, and between the audience itself. So it's very important to find the emotional linkage between the company and the football team and the audience, because that's what drives the business, and that's what drives the final results. In the end, what every company needs is the result. The result is the business-wise, their business parameters, but also in a long-term perspective, it's very important to finding the content that suits the most your audience, that increases the engagement, and in the end, you have the greatest results, not only for the short-term perspective, but also for the long-term as well. Quality content is crucial, and why? Because the quality content is not just the content and the amount of content you create, but also what kind of content you create. And if you create the content that is suitable for each of the channel that you use, especially in digital media, when especially this year, when there were lots of information, lots of different information, the visuals and the messages that brands were using, in the end, the user was taking just the grabbing the attention of the user was mainly from the brands that had different kind of communication. Different kind of communication, I mean that the emotional communication, because every time you communicate something with the audience, the messages that you communicate, the call to actions that drives the business growth is not very interesting for the user unless you put something special in the content, something that drives their emotion, rises their emotion. In the end, in a long-term perspective, this emotion plays the huge role in choosing the company or the brand and the product they choose. Passion and loyalty, these are the key parameters that every brand should take care of, because the passion is from the user side very important, I would say, and the loyalty as well, because if they like the brand and if they have this connection with the brand, their loyalty is guaranteed for a long-term perspective. It's also very important to tell the stories, not the figures, because in the end, what I think is that figures speak to the head, but stories speak to the heart. So that's why if you speak to the heart of the users, it's very crucial in the moment when you drive your sales or you drive your other types of different business perspectives so that users convert in the end. Stories unite us. What I mean in that, stories are one of the most crucial aspects, I would say, that unite people. For example, if we take, let's say, to one of the most great players, right, Messi and Ronaldo, and we make a difference and differentiate the audiences. Every time some fan of Messi, let's say, writes something in social media, there are lots of different fans who are also commenting, and they're expressing their love towards this player. And also there is another team who is Ronaldo's fans, who are also cheering for Ronaldo, and they are also coming to that exact post, and they are writing something different, and they are just competing. And within this competition, the audience interacts with the brand, and in the end, they are united for one whole goal. They love Ronaldo, and they love also Messi, and they are together. They just share their emotions between each other, and that's what exactly matters in the end. One of the examples I like the most is Diego Costa. Diego Costa, who is one of the great players, I would say, and why he's great and why he has so many fans worldwide. First of all, of course, because he's a great player, and second, he has a great story behind. Diego Costa was raised in the smallest and poorest city in Brazil. So people know the story, and people appreciate him as one of the most successful players who has always a goal and who was always striving to reach his goal. And in the end, he is one of the successful players, and he has lots of different fans, especially in social media. That's the story that motivates others to also strive more and to work more on their desires and passion to reach their goals in the end. Also quite an interesting example is Barack Obama. He used the same story in his elections during the presidential elections. So what he was doing, he was telling his story, how he was raised in Africa, in a small city in Africa, and he had his challenges, he had his desires, and nobody was helping him. And in the end, he was striving to reach more and more, and he won. He actually won. Where and how the story is told. So it's very important, not only the story you are telling, but it's also very important where do you tell the story and how do you tell the story, what kind of content do you have. Important is also choosing the mix of different channels, especially in digital media, because every time you create some kind of big campaign, in the end what matters is that people know about your campaign and people know about the exact messages you need to deliver to your audience. There are lots of different channels, but most of all, the most successful and most effective ones that I would emphasize is the social media, especially in Ukraine, the Instagram and Facebook, one of the most successful and effective channels to communicate the stories about football clubs, about the players itself. And also, one of the most important part is to create the specific calendar, the content calendar, where you will have the vision of what are you communicating and in which period are you communicating. And in the end, you are putting this calendar on the calendar of the sports activities, and then you have a great plan for the future in order to increase the audience and also increase the engagement rates. Types of online content, what type of online content you can create. I would say that you can start from the team announcements, the most important announcements, and also the score announcements and the prognosis for the games, the fantasy game that drives lots of engagement. Also, you can handle Q&A sessions with your team players, and also declare the player of the month, and also the fan stories. The fan stories is a separate topic, which is also very interesting because, as I mentioned before, they're kind of a tribe, and each member of this tribe has their own story, and they would like to share why do they like football generally, and why do they cheer for a specific team or a player. You can also use the event highlights, and usually based on my experience, usually what works the most on engagement rates is the behind the scenes. The session, the training sessions, the other kind of content that is not usually in TV, but it's like the separate content of the players who are making fun of each other, or they are just communicating with their teammates. How it works in the end. So there are various types of content, and there are lots of different types of content which are basically from the beginning not really connected with each other. So first of all, it's like various content, just mapping the content, and then moving to the other step when you just create the stories from this content. So you're linking different kind of content and you create the stories, and then you start communicating these stories so that in every channel and in every opportunity that you have to communicate and to link with the audience, you have a right strategy to communicate. And in the end, you are choosing the media where you need to communicate these messages, and you need to show others what are your different kinds of projects, the content projects, or different kind of updates regarding the team plays. Share your story means that every football club and every team should their stories, but not only the stories that are success, they're emphasizing their success, but also the frustrations and the failures, because every time you share the story of your success, everybody is happy, but in the end, it's not natural, because everyone and every team player has their own failures, and your fans also want to know about those failures. Stories from your fans. Again, these are the stories that are shared from the fan side. Maybe they have the merchandise of your brand, and they are just during the off season they are just wearing this merchandise in order to show others that they are the fan of your club. Or maybe they want to share some thoughts about the football club, or they just want to share how much they love the football club. So this is very crucial moment, because every time you show fans in your stories, in your social media, they're more engaged, because they have their own friends who are also watching the social media news, and they also want to engage with the content where they see their friends. The team member stories, this one is also very interesting and very important, I would say, because whenever you share the story of the team player, how did they start? Not everyone was in a comfort, not everyone had all the possibilities to reach their goals and to work on themselves. So here the most important thing is that your audience is the younger audience who have their own desires and passion, and they also want to reach their goals. And it's very important to show others that the team players of your football club, they're also the people like you. They are among us and they are living the life that we live in. And they have also started from the basic steps from the childhood. They were working hard in order to reach success and to be successful players. So the content mapping. The first part is content mapping. You just map down all the content that you can create around your players, around your the different, let's say, different fans and clubs, and then you move to the other stage where you have a strategy for each channel. Then you integrate the brand, because every team and every club has their own brand and their own partner who are also investing in this club in order to also reach their goals and also to interact with the audience. And the next step and the final step is that you create the content calendar where you indicate when and where are you communicating your messages. There should be another slide, but anyways, that was basically everything that I want to share with you today.
Спасибо огромное.
Thank you very much. When we started talking about storytelling, I remember the case study which Paramatch did together with Shakhtar FC when, thanks to Zoom, despite the lockdown, we were able to celebrate the champion title with the team, almost face-to-face with the team. And that is an amazing example of storytelling. And that's an example of when the story was told through many, many viewpoints, including the eyes of the viewer. Because where do you learn that kind of stuff? Because it's very important, it's very interesting to listen to this, but other teams and other clubs are interested in where you can learn to even come up with these great case studies.
Thank you for the questions. Also an interesting question, I would say, because lots of people are asking all the time that when they see that there are some challenges, they are always asking, like, how can we do it? So I would suggest that it's very important to follow the trends, and it's very important to read all the time and to find the references, because there are lots of clubs, and they're like Chelsea, for example, they are creating the greatest content. For me, it's one of the best contents among the football clubs. And also there is Manchester United, who is also creating a great content. And what I'm doing, I'm usually just following their trends and following their news and information. I'm seeing what they are doing, and based on the trends and based on the references, then I'm creating my own plan. But first of all, in storytelling, as I've mentioned previously, all of the clubs have their stories, their success stories, their failure stories, and also they have the story, like how did they start, where did they start from, and when they find the combination for all of this, like their own stories, their references, and also the trends, I think that with this combination, together with the marketing team, they can create the great stories and the great cases of success.
Александр, может быть, вы можете тоже поделиться парой советов?
Alexander, maybe you could share some of these. Where do you get inspiration on where to take your stories? Regarding interesting stories, what's most important is to get the team on board before you start telling a story. I mean, the players and the people who are the key actors and lead characters of your story, they need to be ready. They need to be on board. So get your actual sports team on board. That's the first thing that you need to box off in order to start telling anything at all. In terms of why we have two teams making content, one is making more sports-oriented content and the other one is making more entertainment-oriented content. And we make brainstorming sessions when we discuss what kind of ideas exist. We also look at what other clubs do, not only in football, not only in Europe. Yes, we look at other different markets, and we do look at references. And when we have a list of ideas, then we think in terms of our capability of which of those we can produce. Because what was presented this year, due to COVID-19 and the lockdown, we started looking more and more towards developing content. We did develop a digital product, which is Shakhtar Club. Now we are building actual content for this product, and these are the first steps that we're making, and this is something that is built around telling a story about what every single person in the club does and what the club does as a whole. Do you agree that video is the main driver for digital and that you need to pay more attention to video? Or is text and picture, do they still work? Let's start with you, Alexander. What do you see in terms of your figures? Of course, video content is these limitations that we have right now. That is the most important type of content in terms of engagement and attraction of new audiences. This is the most, let's say, operational mechanism. If we talk about entertainment as a whole, it's usually based around audiovisual media, because people subscribe to Netflix, they go to cinema. All of these services, of course, are based around visual content, and the dynamics is that video is the most important type of content. Of course, then we're going to see AR, VR, I don't know, maybe some augmented reality through some microchips implanted into people's body, I don't know. But Tamara, do you think video is the most important driver of engagement? Do clubs need to focus on that?
Just 100% by 100% agree with my colleague, because currently the trends in social media and trends in digital generally shows us that the top directions that every company should look after is video content and mobile advertising. So definitely, especially in sports, because there is an action and people would like to see the action, not read the action.
Я вас еще немножко помучу вопросами. Многие клубы боятся...
Many clubs are concerned they're conservative in terms of risking and transcending some boundaries. And sports is a very conservative area. The leadership is very conservative. People are afraid to joke. People are afraid to joke at themselves. What is your advice? How scary is it to have a laugh at yourself at a certain moment? I think most people who play sports are very superstitious. And there's a nuance here. Sometimes showing a locker room or some kind of other fun content, it's difficult for us to explain as marketing that a player should do this and the coach should approve of that, and somebody else has to do that. So if we just place a camera on the team bus, there are limitations with that. But on the other hand, this is possible. It's possible to drive content. We have examples from FC Metalist, Karpaty, and others. And this is not about us trying to harass our players, etc. But we have our own missions to achieve in order for the club at large to be successful. And this is what we do with the consideration of what we have to do. So our tasks, our goals, they require involvement of certain people. And what about the series like The Last Dance by Michael Jordan or the series about Sunderland, do they allow you to break stereotypes because they give you bus cams and uh, dressing room cams and nothing bad happened? They gave you the insider scoop, and but this works as soon as the team is winning, you know? But actually, it's an important tool if we take any club, or at least a majority clubs of the Ukrainian league, Ukrainian First League, who is the separate player? Uh, any separate player is known through the prism of journalism, but the clubs who can distribute and produce and share their content through different channels allow the audience to know about who these players are, because the media at large, they would manipulate and get partial information at best. So this allows, publishing your own content allows your first party content to be heard and to bring across the personalities of separate players. Tamara, would you like to add something?
To add that these kind of TV episodes and the movies are one of the best examples of storytelling.
Это правда, и мы продолжаем тему.
And that is true. And continuing on the topic of storytelling, we have Vladislav Akhilchuk, our last but not the least of our speakers. And Vladislav is the founder of the Evolution Agency, and he also is behind the social networks of many prominent clubs, including Shakhtar. Vladislav, can you tell us more about how to develop athletes' personal brands? Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me. Everybody, I think, in the chat room, they wrote me that everything's okay with the sound. Yeah. Today we are going to talk about personalities, about athletes, namely. We have experience with fitness, and now we are supporting the Academy of Fitness in Ukraine. But today I'd like to talk to you about football and how you can engage social networks, because for football, it's not in football players' DNA that if I am an athlete, I need to digitize myself in social networks. I will, just a little bit about myself, but there's this example. Maybe some of you will know that, but very often I would ask whether you know of this person, and most of the people say we don't. But can you just imagine who this is? Who do you believe this is? And who this could be if you look at this picture? And this is an Instagram picture. And some people would probably think of this person as an entrepreneur, that they don't only have a light at the end of the tunnel, they have a light all through the tunnel. But this is actually a retired guy who was made into an Instagram millionaire by two marketing specialists. They just liked the guy and decided to catapult him into popularity. And he was very wildly successful with a lot of requests and etc. But I think, like Alexander said, the first thing that we want to do, I'm just going to share my own experience, and I'm going to be very humble about that. Our budgets are very humble. So I'm going to talk about what we actually did. First and foremost, whether or not this is required for the athlete. My first case study was Sergei Grysov. After half a year of collaborating with the Association of Ukrainian Football, I decided to try and work with athletes personally. First thing that the athlete themselves need to realize why this is necessary for them and for you. Because in terms of the athlete, usually this sounds like I'll need to spend extra time and some money, and what next? So for them, it's a separate line of work, which comes together with family and practice and games, and this is an additional chunk of time that they need to dedicate to creating this kind of content. So if a person doesn't understand what they need this for, they are a non-starter. In my practice, I don't know why some players said let's do it, but they did. When the person doesn't understand the result, but they are doing this for something. Here's an example by Peugeot Ukraine. This looks like an official account, but I made this screenshot when I saw this giveaway. Because whenever a giveaway lacks specific details, and it's very difficult to make it a success, and the brand gets very mixed communications from its fan base. But here, this is notably lacking in detail. But then they got a lot of comments from the subscribers. And the comments display confusion on what's going to happen. And what this tells us that if the people don't even know what they're doing, but they know why they're doing it for, they will still do it. So for the athlete, it's important to understand what they need to do and why. The next slide is purely informational. When I did my analysis, that was the end of December of 2019. Actually, 2020, I'm sorry. I started to analyze what happens to football players, and not only here, but globally. How do they monetize themselves outside of the football pitch, and how much they make? And one of the things that I found, poring over the data of influencers in 2021, this is going to be a huge market to be an influencer. Not even just blogger, but a leader of opinion. This is shaping up to be a $5 to $10 billion market, and it's very important. It's a good opportunity to participate in this market. So maybe I have some athletes who are lining up to do this. So what kind of activity are the athletes doing? I was researching how active the football players were. So I found Zichenko, Milevsky, Moraes, and Lunin has become more active. When he started getting professional consultations on social networks, he got more active. Milevsky is more or less active, but we know his YouTube project, which is garnering a lot of attention. And Alexander Zinchenko, it's pretty haphazard and chaotic, but if there is no culture like that in this environment, we can't just come into the environment and say, hey, make beautiful content and people will like and share it. Here's how you make this. This will never work, especially because when we understand that the athlete needs to be created conditions to understand why they need to do something extra. And this is the most important point I want to make today. It's difficult to move something outright, and you need to understand that athlete social network presence is not the same as a company social network presence. It's much more plannable. For companies, it's much more plannable, it's much more predictable. It can be more systematic because the game results do not influence the presence. But for athletes and football players, have a completely different set of input data. There are two ways you can kind of interact. You can interact without studying the client's needs, and if you see a round mouth and you're trying to push a square product into a round mouth. That if you have too much money and too much time, you can kind of do it when you're trying to launch a new product or a new service and people don't know about it yet or haven't even thought about this yet. But there's another way called pull marketing, is when we study what the people actually require and lack and their needs. For their needs, we try to build a product to suit their needs. Why this is important is because when people start out, we need to understand what solution are you looking at in the end. Right now we're working only with Instagram. Why only Instagram is because we would like to focus on one channel with a high degree of quality and a high degree of engagement. And I try to forecast engagement for each athlete that I work with, because for us it's a priority indicator, which is audience engagement and which is key for monetization. Of course, it's difficult to forecast before you have achieved anything because you don't understand the tempo and the growth rate that you want to expect, and maybe you don't know some hurdles that exist. But it's very difficult for me to start without any figures. Just coming and saying, let's do something so that we can get somewhere, doesn't really work for me. So we took Instagram, and this is why we just specifically take Instagram, is because there's a lot of our audience there. And we tried to real football fans who like Shakhtar and other teams. So that's just very briefly. You know, one of the other advantages that needs to be mentioned is, one girl has posted a photo of a disfigured person, and she got comments like, beautiful, you go girl, etc. So it's very difficult with athletes to engage the audience because the majority of athletes don't do anything on their social networks. But if you do at least something, you are going to get the attention of the entire audience because the competition is quite low. So there is this advantage, but nobody really uses it. What's also important to understand is that analyzing the European market, I realized that their case studies are not really applicable, to us. We can't, like Sergio Ramos or Marcelo, we can't just post our torso on Instagram. With Sergey, you can't find photos of his torso. So we don't really need to carbon copy the content of our European friends. Finding someone in the ex-Soviet states to copy or to steal like an artist, we just couldn't do it. So we tried to build an image for Sergey, to build his social media presence, and now we are building content, creating content in line with his presence. And the second part of my presentation is where we're going. So first and foremost, we needed to build an image that I mentioned in the previous slide. You can't just make content for content's sake. You can't make trendy content just to get into TikTok's top or recommended or suggested pages. We are not supposed to make bloggers out of our athletes. We are trying to make them leaders in their own segment. We don't want to make them film 15 stories per day or go to bathroom with their phone. So thinking about this input data that we have, we went a completely different way. We laid down a set of ground rules and requirements of what they should talk about and what they should tell their audience about. A voice. If you look at Sergei Krivtsov, and I specifically look at the media, he is viewed as one of the most well-humored, or one of the athletes with the best sense of humor. Whenever he posts a story, uh, the media pick it up and savor it. And if you look at the stories, that's true. Everybody, even in Shakhtar, says that he's a goofer, and so even people say that you've been invited specifically to be the team's mascot, not a football player. And he makes videos in line with that. For him, it's very organic. For example, today, in my opinion, uh, the answer to the question of whether it's appropriate for football players to joke, for some it's not, but for him, for example, it is, and it's very comfortable to make this kind of content with him. More than just emojis, analyzing football player accounts. Uh, many people in Europe would just not even write a text. They would just post a bunch of emojis, which does not even view the text. When we cannot, which is not considered text. Uh, for Juventus, maybe that's possible when they have a huge and loyal user base. Even when you just post a heart, you get a lot of engagement. But we need to do something different. We need to be a bit more interesting. We need to show ourselves and to engage differently. We can't just post emojis. So I want to emphasize when we discuss with the guys, I want to emphasize that we create all of the content together with the athlete. Even when we write something without the athlete, we always run it by them, and they want to say, yes, this is organic. Yes, this is fine by me. If there are some stories or there is some storytelling in the account, that is usually organic, and that comes from the athlete. And in our market, I don't really think we need to write long reads. They have to be immediately accessible and readable in one class. But yes, for example, together with Andrei, we made a very interesting text on how 14 years ago he got signed by Shakhtar, and we had a nice highlight reel by him. And if we made a good image, it's very easy to guess who this is. And when I give speeches in different events and I show this picture, it's very easy to know who parents are, which of your audience are parents. Everybody who is a parent will know that this is Peppa Pig, because your kids watch it, and you will willy-nilly you'll see that. And I know that the rights to Peppa Pig were sold for $4 billion. So here's your 4 billion pig, an image. So whether you're an opinion leader or a blogger, it's very important that from the very start, the athletes are not going to be bloggers. They're not going to have to carry the phone around all the time. Because when I start talking about social networks with athletes, they get sad because they think, am I supposed to film myself all the time? One phrase that I got specifically is, Vlad, we can't, when we're laughing, we can't just pause our laughing and whip out a phone and film our laughing. So you really have to get these expectations straight. We also support a blogger with 500,000 subscribers. She can even film her way to the hospital with a sick kid. She can film that. But you want to, from the get-go, you want to just say that this is not necessary for your athletes. Fly like a butterfly and make stories and make money like LeBron James. Of course, this is not very applicable to our market because NBA is a very unique structure, but you see how much the person is making. And in my stories, I asked the people who make over $10,000 a month, is it more difficult or is it more pleasurable for them to make the content on social networks? and people 63% said yeah, they're pleased to make you more stories. He makes 117,000 per day. Why would he even do that? Because he's okay with the money. But if let's watch LeBron, 15 seconds. That's his stories. Just one random day, for example. And let's go further. And there's this style that we have. Here are the guys, Valera and Taras. Here are examples. So in any situation, just post football or repost. So this was after the game with Inter. What we found out about LeBron James's life in 15 seconds, and what did we find out about Taras's life in 15 seconds? Because LeBron gives a very concise picture of his life. You see that he's taking an ice bath, he's doing some cardio, he drives this flashy car, and he's an open and goofy guy. What can you say about Taras? I mean, periodically he would post his wife's stories, but also these are reposts. But he doesn't create content. But Taras probably plays football. So that much we know. So LeBron kind of displays himself as a very important personality, a very interesting personality outside of basketball. And the value of subscribing to LeBron is because he shows behind the scenes. He shows this behind the scenes activity of big basketball. But for Taras, why should you subscribe to him? There's nothing really new and open, so there's not a lot of value. I actually only have 50 seconds to go. So, key takeaways. First of all, if you create content for athletes and specifically football players, it's different for fitness because for fitness we monetize personal brands differently. We create subscription products, etc. But so you need to understand that for football you are a trailblazer. It means that it's going to be hard, but if you do everything correctly, you're going to reap great reward. Second is define the goal and values of the partners. If you talk in cuss words, Andrei will never say that, so it's difficult. So I mean, if you speak a different language, sometimes it's very difficult to create a content system. And if none of the teams understand the goal of this, then your cooperation is going to fail. For example, I never come to my partners and say, let's build content and make millions of dollars. Because I say, let's get a test period. Here's our figures that we want to aim for. If we can arrive at these figures, we're going to see what happens next. Then we can monetize the athlete. But if they're not doing anything in terms of content, there's nothing to monetize. Third is creating a mutually understandable model of cooperation. Because if they don't understand what happens after what, it's going to be difficult. But if you give something complicated and difficult, people fail to accept that. So show something simple, show it, run it by them, and collaborate. Also, try to create 80% content, always getting the athlete on board. Because making content is work for the athlete. And a lot of our athletes have a few kids, so they have family, they have work. So 80% of the content has to be developed minimally involving the athlete. So I mean, some situational things, but this is something that we're coming to. We're going to get more situational content, which is going to be interesting not only to the football audience. So we will need to create content which reaches wider than football. So it could be potentially picked up by more people than those who watch the Champions League. For example, we had guys posting stories when people were playing a bar game, for example. But besides posting this, we posted an old iron desk which was in every yard, and we said, remember how this element of the table is called, and we kind of engage people through that. Uh, People got nostalgic. They could relate to Sergei because he also started with this old table and this old goal in their yard, and also try to create systematically and filled with a certain message. So try to build content systematically, because I know a lot of types of content and how to make it, and video and static, etc. But for me, this is not a priority, because the types of content, it's widely available. You can read up on it. But building content systematically with athletes who are not systematic, for example, the game went wrong and they don't have an inconsistent result. Maybe they caught COVID-19 or the games got postponed, and you have to substitute one type of content with the other type of content. And the principle of my team is evolve every day, become a little bit better every day, and you will be unmatched in 10 years. Vlad, thank you very much. I'm very thankful to you for this presentation. I hope that a lot of athletes look at it and become more active in social media. Due to our situations, we have run out of the schedule. I hope that people can write you questions on Facebook, and then we're going to ask. I would like to ask Tamara and Alexander one question each. Can you offer some advice to sporting organizations in terms of how to behave in these turbulent times? For example, when YouTube is down and the stadiums are empty, what do you do in terms of digital, and what do you prioritize if you're a sporting organization?
I would recommend to have a plan A and plan B in case if there will be any kind of weird things like pandemic. And first of all, I would again recommend to create some kind of plan, the content calendar in advance for those plans, for both plans. What I would also suggest is to create their content base, the video content base, and in case if there will be something happening around that will have an impact on the matches, that they will have the stories and they will have the content that they can use in those times when they do not have another content like live matches, highlights, or something else. Just the regular stories and just the regular videos, small kind of videos that they can use in the social media.
Спасибо.
Ну, с моей стороны,
From my side, the most important recommendation that I could offer to any organization is to look in the mirror, look into yourself, and look at the expertise of the people who are in this organization, because both the planning and achieving results starts with the people in your organization. If people have the desire and the skill to go for these results, that is a very important step forward. Then when you focus on the tasks that you aim to solve, because if there is a clearly set task and everybody understands what we're doing and why, it's a huge step towards the result. Thank you very much. I would like to thank our informational partners, Football Hub and Tribuna.com, and those who could not tune in to this conference from the very beginning. It will be posted on YouTube whenever it comes back up. And to sum it up, I would like to give the microphone to Vadim Misura, the representative of Parimach the brand. So Vadim, as the strategic partner of sports in the entire country, what can you advise us? Thankfully, YouTube has reportedly come back online, and most of our viewers could watch us directly, and I'm convinced that you found value in what you heard today. And on behalf of Parimach, I'd like to thank Mr. Jose and Anastasia, who definitely presented some of the better case studies. And it's our double pleasure because Parimach is a partner of one of the best leagues in the world. I'm very thankful to Alexander Mamaliga. I think Shakhtar's team is following the winds of time and uses all of the modern technology. So we're thankful to you for sharing this experience, because your experience is valuable to the representatives of our sports marketing to adopt this experience. And of course, Vladislav, who has become an emotional, he's given us some emotional accents, because the head of our marketing, Tamara Patashvili, has definitely stopped on some very important issues, focused on some very important issues. So you always ask what you could recommend. We will ask only one thing. Just follow our information, follow our channels, because we are planning to continue these activities. And it's worth noting that Parimach brand is focusing on our tech initiatives. We have recently opened a tech academy, and we hold a number of conferences. Our representatives organize a number of hackathons, so we try to be contemporary and modern, so that whatever happens in Ukraine is at a high enough level, and we are really thankful to you for making this real. Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone who was with us. The Sports Talk Club is drawing to a close. Develop sports and develop sporting organizations and make it more interesting and engaging.